My entitled family wants to take my house and give it to my brother, even though they kicked me out. Why do parents reward the child who hurts them most? I was 18 when my parents kicked me out. No argument, no dramatic shouting match. Just a quiet Sunday morning, a packed duffel bag sitting by the front door, and my father's eyes avoiding mine. My mother stood behind him, arms folded, her expression unreadable. "We think it's time," Dad said, voice steady but cold. "You've finished high school. You need to figure things out on your own now." I thought it was a joke. I laughed, awkwardly, but neither of them smiled. "What are you talking about?" I asked, looking between them. Mom just turned away and walked back into the kitchen. Dad stepped aside, gesturing toward the door. "We've already cleared out your room. Your stuff's in the bag. It's not personal, just necessary, not personal." They were throwing me out like I was a tenant whose lease had expired. I didn't do drugs, I didn't skip school. I was quiet, respectful. The only thing I ever did wrong was not be like my younger brother, Liam, loud, charming, the kind of kid who broke a window and got praised for just being curious. I stood there for a long time, waiting for one of them to break, to say it was a mistake. But nothing came. No explanations, no tears. I remember walking down the street with that bag numb. The sky was cloudy and the wind bit through my thin hoodie. Every step I took away from that house felt like I was walking out of a life that never truly included me. I didn't even have a friend I could call that night. I sat at a bus stop until midnight, just trying to figure out what had happened. Eventually, I called a classmate whose parents let me crash on their couch for a week. It was humiliating. I had no money, no job, and no plan. All I had was the quiet echo of my father's words, "It's time." And the way my mother never even looked back as I left. The first few nights, I cried quietly, making sure no one could hear. I didn't know what I had done to deserve this exile. All I had were questions, but no one was offering answers. A week turned into 2. I started looking for part-time jobs, anything that would get me enough to survive. My pride, which used to make me aim for scholarships and internships, was now in the back seat while survival took the wheel. The worst part wasn't the hunger or the fear of not knowing where I'd sleep next. It was the silence. Not a single call or message from my parents. I didn't know if they missed me. I didn't know if they even cared, but somehow I kept moving. I couldn't stay frozen in that moment of rejection forever. A few months later, I found a room to rent in a stranger's apartment. It was barely more than a closet, but it had a lock on the door, and for the first time since being kicked out, I felt something close to safety. One day, while walking past a coffee shop looking for job postings, I saw "Help Wanted" sign. I walked in, stammered through the interview, and was hired on the spot. Minimum wage, long hours, but I didn't care. I had a job. That night, I bought myself a sandwich, a small celebration. I ate it slowly, savoring every bite like it was a feast. And I realized, maybe for the first time, that I was going to be okay. Not great, not successful, but okay. Of course, I still had nightmares, dreams of being back in that house, of begging to stay, of them slamming the door in my face. Sometimes I woke up crying, hand reaching for a phone that never rang. But I was learning something powerful. I could survive without them. That was the beginning of the long, winding road that would eventually lead to me owning a house of my own. But back then, I was just a scared teenager, sitting in a tiny room with a flickering light bulb, trying to believe that this wasn't the end of my story. The transition from survival to stability didn't happen overnight. It took years, years of missed meals, worn-out shoes, and late night shifts. I floated between jobs, coffee shops, retail stores, warehouse gigs. Each paycheck barely covered rent and food, but I managed. My first real break came at 20. I landed a job as an assistant at a small logistics company. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid more than anything I'd done before. The manager, a no-nonsense woman named Carla, saw that I was serious. She taught me the ropes. More importantly, she didn't treat me like I was disposable. With a steady income, I moved into a studio apartment. It had peeling paint and thin walls, but it was mine. I remember lying on the mattress on the floor, staring at the ceiling and feeling, for the first time in years, a flicker of pride. Still, I was haunted by questions. Why did my parents abandon me like that? Why didn't they call? Did they ever miss me? I never dared reach out. Part of me hoped they would one day contact me, even just to check in. But that day never came. Instead, I poured everything into building a life. I took online courses during my off hours, slowly climbing the ladder at work. I learned budgeting, credit repair, and how to stretch a dollar like magic. My 20s were a blur of hard work and long nights, but every time I got a raise or paid off a bill, it felt like I was reclaiming a piece of myself. Around 24, I got promoted to logistics coordinator. The new position came with benefits and a salary I never imagined possible when I was 18 and homeless. I finally felt like I could breathe. I remember the moment I realized I could start saving for something bigger. A coworker casually mentioned they were house hunting, and it struck me, I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was building. I started researching affordable properties, checking my credit score, and learning about loans. It took 2 more years, but at 26, I stood outside a small, 2-bedroom bungalow on the edge of town, keys in hand. The house was old, with creaky floors and faded shutters, but to me it was a palace. I walked through the empty rooms, listening to the echo of my footsteps. I touched the walls and whispered, "You're mine." That first night, I didn't unpack. I didn't sleep. I sat on the floor of the living room, staring out the window, overwhelmed by everything it had taken to get there. All the nights I spent hungry, all the holidays spent alone, all the birthdays forgotten. And yet, I'd made it. I planted flowers in the front yard, I painted the kitchen cabinets, I fixed a leaking faucet by watching YouTube videos. Slowly, the house transformed. So did I. For the first time in my life, I felt safe. I didn't need anyone's approval. I didn't fear being kicked out. I finally had roots. Friends would come over and marvel at how cozy it was. They didn't know the story behind every piece of furniture, every hand-me-down curtain, every second-hand plate in the kitchen. They didn't know how each item represented a step away from abandonment and a step toward self-worth. By 30, I was content. Not rich, not flashy, but solid. I volunteered on weekends. I joined a community garden. I had a few close friends who became like family. People who showed up on hard days, who never made me feel less for having been discarded by my own blood. And still, after all those years, not a word from my parents. Not a birthday card. Not an email. They vanished from my life like I had never existed. I thought I had buried the pain. I thought I had moved on. But the past has a strange way of knocking on your door when you least expect it. And mine came not in the form of an apology but a request, one that would shake everything I thought I had put behind me. The knock came on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. I was pruning the lavender bush I'd planted by the mailbox when I saw a car I didn't recognize pull into my driveway. The engine stopped, and out stepped a figure I hadn't seen in over a decade, my mother. She looked older, of course. Her once dark hair was streaked with gray, her movements a little slower, but her posture was still rigid, her expression unreadable. My heart thudded against my chest, a surge of old fear rising from deep within me. I stood frozen, garden shears still in hand. She walked toward me as if this were a normal visit, as if no time had passed. "Hello," she said, voice flat. I swallowed hard. "Hi." There was a long silence. Then she looked around, taking in the neat flower beds, the freshly painted porch. "This is your place," I said carefully. She nodded. "It's nice." I didn't know what to say. My throat felt dry. I kept expecting her to say something else, something that might explain why she was here, why now. Instead, she turned slightly. "Your father's in the car?" She waved toward the vehicle, and I saw my father sitting in the passenger seat, arms crossed, avoiding eye contact. Just like the day they kicked me out. "Do you want to come in?" I asked, out of sheer habit. She nodded once. "If you don't mind, I made tea." My hands were trembling as I set the mugs down. We sat at the kitchen table, the silence between us a heavy wall. Finally, my mother spoke. "Your brother's in trouble," she said bluntly. Liam, I hadn't heard his name in years. The last I knew, he was coasting through college on my parents' dime, partying and skipping classes. He lost his job, got into some bad financial decisions, debts. He's struggling. I listened quietly, no emotion on my face. She continued, "He needs a fresh start, a safe place, somewhere stable to reset." Then she looked at me, eyes sharp. "We were thinking this house. It would mean the world to him." At first, I didn't understand what she meant. I blinked. "What?" "You're doing well. Better than any of us expected. You've built something strong. It would be a beautiful gesture. Generous." I stared at her, disbelief curling like fire in my chest. "You want me to give him my house?" Her face didn't change. "It's the right thing. You're the responsible one. You'll be okay wherever you go." "But Liam, he's fragile." I couldn't speak. My vision blurred. After everything, after the exile, the silence, the years of suffering alone, they wanted me to just hand over the only thing I had ever built for myself. "He's your brother," she added, as if that sealed it. Family helps family. My father still hadn't spoken. He just stared out the window like a ghost. I finally found my voice. "You threw me out. You haven't called me in 12 years. You never even asked if I was alive, and now you want my house?" My mother flinched slightly. "We did what we thought was best." "No," I said, standing. "You did what was easy. You kept Liam and discarded me." There was a pause. "We just thought, since you were doing so well, because I did it without you," I said. "Because I bled for this. Starved for it. No one gave me this house. I earned every nail, every floorboard." My father finally turned. "Liam's our son, too. He deserves a chance." "So did I said, voice shaking. "And you gave me nothing." My mother stood. "If you say no, fine. But don't think this won't have consequences. Blood matters." I laughed bitterly. "Only when it's convenient." They left without another word. I watched their car pull away, my chest hollow, my hands trembling. The encounter opened wounds I thought had healed, but something else stirred too, a fierce, unwavering resolve. This house was mine. My life was mine, and no guilt or manipulation would take that from me. A week passed, I didn't hear from them. I told myself it was over, that they had come, made their absurd request, and, having failed, would retreat into silence once more. But silence was never a final word in my family. It was a strategy. It started with a message from my Aunt Helen, someone I hadn't spoken to in nearly a decade. "Heard you're doing well? So proud of you. Hope you'll do the right thing for Liam. Family above all." I stared at the text, baffled. How did she even know where I lived? Then came the Facebook messages. A cousin I hadn't seen since high school messaged me, saying, "We all struggle. But what you're doing to your brother is cruel. He needs support, not rejection." Soon the narrative was everywhere, at least in the small, tangled network of our extended family. I was the selfish one, the traitor, the one who cut off the people who raised me. My phone buzzed with unfamiliar numbers, guilt-laced paragraphs, passive-aggressive memes about loyalty and blood. It wasn't just the words, it was the tone, like I had committed a crime. Like I owed them this house because I had succeeded, and success meant debt. At work, I struggled to focus. At night, I walked through the quiet rooms of my home with a sense of growing unease, as if the walls themselves were listening. But nothing hit harder than the letter. It arrived in a plain white envelope, no return address. Inside was a handwritten note, my mother's script, still crisp and sharp. "We're disappointed, but not surprised. You've always been cold. We hope the years had softened you. Liam is our only son left now. Don't worry, we'll make sure he knows who turned him away." I sat at the kitchen table, that letter shaking in my hand. My only son left now? As if I were already dead to them, as if the child they cast out at 18 had never existed. I wanted to scream, to tear the letter up, but I didn't. I folded it neatly and placed it in the drawer where I kept every painful relic of my past, the last school photo they framed, the birthday card I made when I was 7 that they never threw away, the report card they didn't attend the conference for. And then I did something I hadn't done in years. I called my old neighbor, Mrs. Kim. She was the one who used to give me cookies when I was little, who once offered to call the police when she saw me crying on the front steps after a fight. When she answered and heard my voice, she gasped. "Oh, honey, I've been thinking about you for years. We talk for hours." She told me how after I left, my parents rarely mentioned me, how they told the neighborhood I had chosen to leave, that I wanted to go find myself. "They made it sound like you were some rebellious teen off chasing dreams," she said gently, but I never believed it. I knew something was wrong. That conversation lit something in me, not anger but clarity. My family hadn't just abandoned me. They had rewritten me, recast me as a villain to justify their choices. I wasn't just protecting my house now, I was protecting my truth. I started keeping records. I saved the messages, screenshotted the texts, even took photos of the letter. Not to take legal action, I had no interest in fighting them that way, but because I needed a place to store reality. Proof, evidence that I wasn't insane, that what I had lived through wasn't a dream I was about to wake from. One night, as I stood on my porch under the soft glow of the porch light, a neighbor walking her dog paused at the gate. "Pretty place," she said. "Did you grow up around here?" I smiled faintly. "Not exactly," I replied, "but this place I built." She nodded, sensing something in my voice. "Well, it suits you." And that was the moment it clicked. This wasn't just a house. It was the one thing in my life that hadn't been taken from me, redefined, or twisted. It was the first space I ever created for myself. Every inch was the result of choosing to live, not just survive. They could gossip, they could lie, they could twist the truth until the whole family tree leaned in their direction. But they would never live here. It was early autumn when Liam appeared at my door. I heard the knock just as I was settling down with a book and a cup of tea. I wasn't expecting anyone, and part of me hoped it was just a delivery. But when I opened the door, I was met by a face both familiar and foreign. Liam, taller than I remembered. His hair was messier, dark circles framed his eyes, and his usual smug grin was absent. He looked tired. "Hey," he said, his voice unsure. I didn't invite him in. I stood in the doorway, one hand on the frame. "What are you doing here?" I asked. "I just wanted to talk," he said, shuffling his feet. "Please? Just a few minutes." Despite myself, I stepped aside. We sat in the living room. He looked around like someone surveying a museum, as if the furniture, the photos, the hand-woven rug were all part of some artifact that shouldn't belong to someone like me. "This is a nice place," he said. "Didn't expect it." I didn't reply. I waited, he sighed. "Look, I know things are messed up. Between all of us. That's putting it mildly." He rubbed the back of his neck. "I didn't come here to fight. I came because they told me what you said. About the house." I narrowed my eyes. "They told you I refused to give it to you?" He nodded. "And what do you think about that?" I asked. He looked down. I hoped you might help. I was silent. The air between us grew heavier. Liam, I said, do you even know why they kicked me out? His head snapped up. Surprised, they said you left, that you wanted to leave. I laughed bitterly. No, I didn't. They packed my bags and put them by the door. I had no money, no job, no backup. He stared at me, mouth slightly open. What's not what? Of course not. I interrupted. Because if they admitted what really happened, they'd have to face what they did. He blinked, his expression faltering. I didn't know. No, I said, leaning forward. You didn't care to know? Because they gave you everything, while I had to build my life from scratch. He didn't defend himself. For once, he looked ashamed. I messed up, he said softly. I dropped out of school, got into debt, bad friends, stupid decisions. I waited, he wasn't done. And now, he continued, they're tapped out. No more money. They thought maybe you'd help? That's not helping, I said. That's erasing. He nodded slowly, absorbing my words. I remember, he said. When you left, I thought you were the lucky one. You got out? My jaw tightened. I didn't get out. I was thrown out. Liam's voice dropped. I know. I just didn't understand back then. I was a kid. I thought they could do no wrong. I searched his face for sincerity. For once, I saw no smugness, no entitlement. Just a young man who had finally hit a wall. I'm not going to give you this house, I said quietly. This place is the result of every moment I didn't give up. He nodded. I figured. But I had to ask. We sat in silence for a moment longer. Why didn't you call me all those years? I asked. He looked pained. They said not to, that you'd moved on, that you wanted nothing to do with us. I felt something crack in my chest, not grief exactly, but confirmation. Proof that they'd rewritten me in his eyes too. Well, I said finally, you know now. He stood, unsure of what to say. I'm sorry, he whispered. For what it's worth. I didn't reply. I walked him to the door. As he stepped onto the porch, he turned. You really did all this alone? I nodded, yes. He gave a weak smile. Then you don't need me telling you this, but I'm impressed. And maybe a little jealous. He left, and I stood at the door for a long time after he was gone, staring out at the darkening sky. I didn't know if his apology was real or just another ploy. But for a moment, just a moment, he had seemed lost, like I once was, and that reminded me some people fall and some climb, and sometimes the same blood runs through both. A few days after Liam's visit, I received a call from an unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something in my gut told me to pick up. Hello, it was my father. His voice was strained, formal, like he would understand your brother came a scrib. To see you? Yes, I said flatly. There was a pause. Then, he said you were civil. I almost laughed. I didn't throw him out, if that's what you mean. He cleared his throat. We were hoping, after speaking with him, you might have a change of heart. The casual way he said it, like I had refused to share a toy, not a home I bled to build, ignited something in me. No, I said. I haven't changed my mind. He exhaled like this was a business negotiation gone bad. He's your brother? We all make mistakes? I kept my voice steady. What mistake did I make when you kicked me out at 18? The line went quiet. I worked. I scraped by. I built everything from nothing. And now you want me to throw it away because Liam has debts. More silence. Then he said, we thought you'd be more compassionate. I bristled. Don't talk to me about compassion. I spent nights sleeping at bus stops, eating crackers for dinner. I didn't get compassion. I got silence. We were doing what was best for the family. You mean for Liam, I snapped. You always meant for Liam. He didn't argue. And in that silence, I heard everything he didn't have the courage to admit. We're disappointed in you, he finally said, low and bitter. That stung. But it also set me free. You've been disappointed in me since I learned how to say no, I said. I hung up. And this time I didn't cry. I thought that would be the end of it. But the family pressure didn't stop. Instead, it escalated. Emails came, letters, distant cousins weighing in as if they were judges on some moral tribunal. They spoke of unity, of sacrifice, of forgiveness. But not once did anyone ask me what had happened. They had accepted the family script, that I was the ungrateful one who left, who turned her back on blood. I tried to stay strong, but the isolation crept in again. Even after all these years, even after everything I had built, I felt like that 18-year-old again, clutching a duffel bag, walking into a world that didn't want me. One night, I sat in my living room, lights off, scrolling through old photos on my phone. Pictures of the house when I first moved in. The empty walls, the bare floors, each image was a chapter of my life, proof of every late night, every scraped knee, every moment I had told myself just one more step. That's when I opened the kitchen drawer and pulled out the old photo album. Tucked behind it was a faded envelope, heavier than the others. Inside was a letter I'd never dared to read, the one I'd written to myself the night I moved into this house. The handwriting was shaky. "If you're reading this, it means you survived. I'm proud of you. Don't let them rewrite your story. You built this. You deserve this. You are not their mistake, you are your own triumph." I held the letter to my chest and breathed. This was my home, my sanctuary, and no matter what they said, I wouldn't give it up. Let them gossip. Let them seethe. Let them send 1,000 messages. I had my answer, and I had peace. That was a kind of wealth they would never understand. The peace I felt after that letter didn't last long. It started with a phone call from Aunt Helen again, her voice all sweetness and concern. "I'm just calling to check in," she said. "It's been tense, I know, but you're still family, darling. We all just want what's best." "What's best for who?" I asked. "For everyone," she replied without missing a beat. "You've always been the strong one, and sometimes the strong make sacrifices." That word, sacrifices, rang in my ears long after I hung up. I had sacrificed enough. I'd given up my childhood, my sense of safety, my trust in the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, and now they wanted more. A few days later, it became clear that their campaign wasn't just emotional anymore. It was strategic. I got a call from a real estate agent. Apparently, someone had expressed interest in my house. They said they'd heard the property might be going on the market soon. I never listed it, I said. The agent apologized. "I understand, but someone claiming to be related to you made some inquiries, mentioned financial trouble." I knew immediately who it was. That night, I found a message in my mailbox. No postage, just dropped in by hand. A folded note that read, "Think about what you're doing. This doesn't have to get ugly." I stared at it under the porch light, my fingers trembling slightly. The threat was veiled, but the intent was clear: pressure, intimidation, consequences. All because I said no. The next morning, I checked the locks on my windows. I installed a new security camera by the front door, not because I thought they'd break in, but because I needed to reclaim control. My house, my rules, my sanctuary. Then came the family meeting. I didn't want to go, but curiosity got the better of me. My cousin Joanna said they were meeting at a neutral location, a diner near the old neighborhood. I agreed against my better judgment. I arrived and found half the extended family already seated. My parents, Liam, 2 aunts, an uncle, even a few cousins who hadn't spoken to me since childhood. As I sat down, all conversations stopped, all eyes turned toward me. My father started. "We've all heard the story, but we're here to find a resolution." I remained silent. My mother leaned in. "We don't want to fight, but this family is falling apart." "You did that," I said, "when you decided I was disposable." "She's always been dramatic," one of my aunts muttered. I turned to her, calm but clear. "Do you know why they kicked me out?" She shrugged. "You were rebellious. You didn't fit." I was 18. I was quiet, respectful, working 2 part-time jobs. I never drank. I never broke rules. I just wasn't Liam. Silence. Liam looked down. I continued. "You say you want resolution, but what you want is obedience. You want me to erase my story to make yours easier." My father said, "You've made your point, but you've punished us enough." I stared at him, stunned. "Punished? You're the ones who left me in the street. We all had to make hard choices." He replied. I stood up, and I made mine. "I will not give up my home. I will not be shamed into surrender. And if any of you truly cared, you would have reached out before you needed something." They didn't stop me as I walked out. Not a word, not a cry, just silence, and that silence, for once, was mine. I drove home with the windows down, the air sharp against my face. I realized I hadn't felt this free in years. They had tried everything: guilt, lies, manipulation, even threats. But I was still standing. My house was still mine. And no meeting, no family tribunal would ever take that from me. I thought the family meeting would be the final crescendo, the desperate last act in a drama I never agreed to be part of. But I was wrong. When I walked away that night, I believed I had ended the conversation. In truth, it had only just begun. The next morning, I opened my front door and found a plastic bag hanging from the doorknob. Inside was a bundle of photocopied letters, old school reports, doctor's notes, even a baby photo of me, along with a hand-scrawled note in my mother's unmistakable handwriting. "You've always been part of this family. We never stopped caring. Don't destroy what's left." It was surreal. A grotesque form of nostalgia weaponized to remind me that, at one point, I'd belonged, as if that erased everything that had come after. I stared at the photo of me in a diaper, cheeks round, eyes bright. Was I really that child once? The one they claimed to love before they decided I wasn't worth keeping? The bag went into the trash, not out of malice, but because I was done letting their version of the past rewrite mine. Still, the confrontation at the diner had triggered something deeper inside me. A pain I hadn't allowed myself to fully feel. Not until now. I took a day off work and sat in my bedroom, surrounded by my journals, notebooks, and old receipts, the tiny paper trail of my entire adult life. I remembered every dollar I'd counted, every dinner of rice and butter, every holiday spent alone. I remembered the first night in this house, sitting on the floor with no furniture, just breathing and whispering, "You're safe now." That voice, mine, had always been there, even when theirs wasn't. But the pressure didn't stop. The next week, someone filed a noise complaint against me with the neighborhood association. I live alone. I don't throw parties. It was baseless, clearly fabricated. Then, an anonymous tip to code enforcement claimed my front yard was overgrown and unsafe. My lavender and rose bushes, meticulously maintained, were suddenly under scrutiny. Each time, I handled it calmly. Professionally, I documented everything. Still, the weight of their persistence pressed on my chest like a stone. It wasn't about the house anymore. It was about control. They couldn't stand that I had created something strong without them. That I had become someone whole in the absence of their approval. One night, Liam called. I hesitated but answered. "Hey," he said. "I didn't know they were doing that. The letters? The complaints?" "You think they're doing it?" I asked, though I already knew. "I don't know," he said. "But it's not right." There was a pause. Then he added, "I moved back in with them." I said nothing. I thought maybe I could help fix things from the inside. But it's worse than I remembered. They talk about you like you're this traitor. Like you're the reason everything fell apart. "They need a villain," I said quietly. "It's easier than admitting they pushed me away." He sighed. "I'm sorry." I didn't reply. Not because I didn't believe him, but because I knew he couldn't undo the damage. "Not now. Maybe not ever. I won't ask again," he said. "I know it's yours. I had to say it out loud. I'm proud of you." That surprised me. "Thanks," I said, and I meant it. After the call, I stood on my porch, looking out at the night. The air was cool. The streetlights cast soft shadows on the pavement. My house stood firm, unmoved by the storm around it. I realized something important then. They weren't angry because I had a house. They were angry because I had found peace, and peace, to them, meant I no longer needed them. It was never about walls or roofs or land, it was about independence. And mine was unforgivable. I didn't set out to uncover the lies. In truth, I thought I already knew them all. I thought the silence, the exile, the manipulations, they were the full story. But when I finally spoke to my cousin Natalia, everything changed. Natalia had always been different. She was quiet, observant, and perhaps the only person in the family who ever treated me with warmth. We hadn't spoken in years, but after the family meeting, she reached out via email. "I'm sorry," she wrote. "You deserve better. If you ever want to know the whole story, call me." I hesitated for days. Then one evening, curiosity outweighed caution, and I called her. She picked up immediately. "Thank you," she said softly. "I wasn't sure you would." "I need to understand," I said. "What they told everyone, what they said about me." Natalia didn't sugarcoat it. She explained how, shortly after I left, my parents told the extended family that I had run away after refusing help, that I was always too proud to accept support, and that they had tried everything to keep me close. "They made it sound like you abandoned them," Natalia said. "They told everyone you left in the night, that you refused to go to college, that you cut ties." My stomach turned. "That's not true. I didn't leave. They kicked me out." "I believe you," she said. "I always suspected something didn't add up, but they were so convincing. And Liam, he never said anything different." "Because he didn't know," I murmured. "Not really?" Natalia went quiet. Then she added, "They kept saying you'd come back. That once you failed, you'd return with humility." That word, humility. As if they were waiting for me to crawl back, begging for forgiveness, confirming their version of events. "They wanted to break you," she said gently. "They didn't expect you to thrive." That truth hit harder than I expected. They didn't just cast me out. They crafted a narrative where I was the ungrateful child, the one who left them. And every day I succeeded on my own, that lie became harder for them to uphold. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. "Because I see what they're doing," she replied. "And it's wrong. You deserve to know how far they went to erase your truth." I thanked her and hung up, hands shaking. I sat on the floor of my bedroom, surrounded by the stillness of a house I had filled with my own effort, my own pain, my own hope. Then I opened my laptop. I started writing. Everything. I wrote the real story. The night they told me to leave, the jobs, the hunger, the rented closets, the loneliness, the tiny wins, the hard-fought joy. The first moment I felt like a human being again. I didn't post it anywhere, not yet. But I needed it written down, a counter-narrative to theirs, something that might survive if I ever needed to prove to myself again that I wasn't just some bitter invention in their cautionary tale. Later that week, I got a message from another cousin. She'd spoken to Natalia and wanted to apologize. Slowly, trickles of truth began surfacing. Not many, but enough. And that was the beginning of something else. Not reconciliation, but understanding, witness. They couldn't rewrite me anymore. Not fully. Not cleanly. The cracks in their story had formed. Liam texted again. "They're upset that people are talking, he wrote. But I told them, if they didn't want the truth to come out, they shouldn't have buried it. That small act of courage surprised me. For the first time, I sensed that maybe he wasn't just a pawn anymore. Maybe he had seen the blueprint of favoritism and how it had ruined not only our relationship, but his own development. Still, I kept my distance. Some truths, once uncovered, don't come with a reunion, they come with release. That night, I looked around my living room. Every photo, every piece of furniture, every plant, it all told a story. My story. And no one could take that from me now. The visit from Liam had left more of an imprint on me than I'd admitted, even to myself. I kept replaying our conversation in my mind. Especially that last sentence, "I'm proud of you." It was something I had never heard from anyone in my family. Not once. And though I didn't let it show in front of him, it reached a part of me I had long believed to be numb. Still, I hadn't expected him to return. And yet, 2 weeks later, he did. This time, he didn't knock right away. I saw him through the front window, standing on the sidewalk, holding something wrapped in newspaper. For a full minute, he just stared at the house, like he was trying to work up the courage to walk up the steps. I opened the door before he could knock. He looked startled. "Hey, I wasn't sure if you'd be home." "I'm always home," I said simply. He stepped forward and held out the wrapped item. "It's for you. I know it's weird, but I found it, and I thought you should have it." I took it carefully and unwrapped it. Inside was an old frame, a school picture of me, maybe 10 years old, smiling shyly with braces and uneven bangs. It was cracked at the corner, but still intact. "I found it in Dad's shed," he said, under a box of tools. I don't know why he kept it. I stared at the photo for a long moment. "I didn't even know they kept any pictures of me." "I think they kept more than you'd expect," he said softly. "They just couldn't face them." He sat on the porch steps. I joined him, both of us quiet. "I didn't come to ask for the house again," he said preemptively. "I swear. I just wanted to talk." I looked over at him. He was wearing the same hoodie he'd had since college. His face was thinner. The bravado he used to carry so confidently had worn down. In its place was something rawer, more real. "I thought they were right about you," he admitted. "For years, that you were cold, stubborn, selfish, that you didn't want to be part of the family." I didn't respond. I let him keep going. "But after seeing the way they talk about you now, how angry they are that you won't give in, it started to make sense. They don't miss you. They miss controlling you." That sentence settled between us like a heavy truth. "I didn't mean to become their golden child," he said. I went along with it because it was easier. They took care of everything. I didn't have to grow up. And now," I asked. He looked out at the street. "Now I'm 30 and drowning in debt. No degree, no real skills, no sense of who I am without them telling me what to do." His honesty surprised me. "I'm trying to change," he continued. "But it's hard. And I guess I'm sorry it took losing everything to understand what they really did to you." For the first time in a long time, I believed him. "I didn't need you to defend me," I said gently. "I just needed you to see me," he nodded. "I do now." We sat like that for a while, two siblings, both shaped and scared by the same hands, finally acknowledging each other without the shadow of our parents standing between us. Before he left, he asked, "Do you think we'll ever be close again?" I thought for a moment. Maybe. But it has to be real. No more pretending. No more borrowing their narratives. He nodded, eyes a little wet. "I can live with that." After he left, I placed the framed photo on the shelf in my hallway, not as a sentimental gesture, but as a reminder of who I was, of who I became, and of how far I had come despite being forgotten. That photo, cracked and aged, didn't make me sad. It made me resolute, because I now knew even if they once held a picture of me, they never really saw me. But I saw myself clearly, fully, and at last without shame. The morning I found the diary, I wasn't looking for it. I had decided to clean out the closet in the guest room, the one filled with old boxes I never fully unpacked after moving in. Most were labeled with practical things: winter clothes, tax docs, kitchen extras. But at the bottom of the stack, I spotted a small, beat-up shoebox with no label. When I opened it, the scent of old paper and ink rose up like a whisper from the past. Inside was a faded, spiral-bound notebook, a cheap one, covered in scratches and stickers from another time. I knew it instantly. My childhood diary. I hesitated before opening it. My hands trembled slightly, not from fear but from the anticipation of rediscovering a version of myself I had long forgotten. The first entry was dated just after my 14th birthday. "Mom didn't come to the school play. Said she was tired. Dad said I was being too sensitive. But I saw the empty seat in the front row. I flipped to another. Liam broke the toaster today. They laughed. Last week, I accidentally dropped a glass and got grounded for 3 days." The entries went on, small notes filled with observations I hadn't even remembered writing. Tiny injustices that added up like invisible weights on a scale I hadn't known existed back then. Sometimes I think they'd be happier if I disappeared. I stopped reading for a moment, letting the words settle. I'd written those words at 15. It wasn't the pain of those years that surprised me. It was how clearly I had seen it even then. I had always known. I just hadn't had the power to change it. Reading through the diary was like visiting a forgotten city, full of memories I had paved over just to survive, moments when I'd cried silently in my room. The first time I tried to cook dinner at 16 because no one remembered it was my birthday. The nights I had stared out the window, wondering if life would ever feel safe. One entry stood out more than the others. They always say Liam has a future. They never say that about me. I don't think they see me at all. That was the truth, distilled in a single sentence. The root of it all. Not hate, not neglect, but absence. A hollow where love should have been. I closed the diary and sat in the quiet room for a long time. Outside, the wind rustled the trees and the sound of birds echoed faintly. Inside, I felt something shift. For years, I had carried the question, was I really unwanted? And now I had the answer. Not from their mouths, but from my own hand. From the child I used to be, speaking through time, asking for nothing but to be seen. Later that evening, I made myself a simple meal and sat on the porch, watching the sky change colors. The diary rested beside me. It wasn't just a collection of sad stories. It was evidence that I had survived not because of them, but in spite of them. That the child who wrote those words had not only endured, but had grown into someone capable of love, of safety, of choosing peace over pain. In the days that followed, I felt different. Stronger, yes, but also cleaner. Like the truth had finally rinsed away the residue of guilt I never should have carried. When Liam called again, I told him about the diary. He was quiet for a while. Then he said, I wish I had written things down too. Maybe then I'd understand myself better. I told him he still could. We didn't talk about the house anymore. That part of the story was over. Now, we were trying to learn how to speak without old wounds filling the silence. It wasn't easy, but it was real. As for my parents, they remained silent. No more letters. No more calls. It seemed the family's campaign had finally run out of steam. But I no longer needed silence from them to feel peace. I had found it on my own. There wasn't a single moment that marked the final goodbye. No dramatic confrontation. No letter filled with closure. It happened gradually, like leaves falling in autumn, silently, persistently, until one day the trees stood bare. After I read the diary, after the family stopped calling, I began to feel the weight lift. It wasn't sudden. It was slow and strange, like adjusting to clean air after years of breathing smog. At first, I didn't trust it. I waited for the next phone call, the next veiled threat, the next emotional ambush. But it didn't come. Instead, life moved on. I redecorated the guest room, painting the walls a soft sage green. I donated the old shoebox, the last of my emotional archives, to a fire pit in the backyard. Not in anger, but as an offering to the version of me who needed it back then. Friends noticed I was smiling more. Laughing louder, I began hosting Sunday dinners, filling my house with voices and music and the smell of garlic and roasted vegetables. I never thought this place could feel so warm. And then one evening, months later, I got a voicemail. It was my mother. Her voice was tired, slower than I remembered. Just calling to say I hope you're okay, that's all? No request, no guilt, just those words? I saved the message but didn't return the call. I didn't hate her, or my father. Not anymore. What I felt now was a deep, aching distance, the kind that cannot be crossed with time or blood alone. Sometimes when I saw old family photos online shared by cousins or tagged in posts, I felt a brief pang, not of longing but of curiosity. Who were those people? What version of me had they created to explain my absence? But that curiosity faded quickly. Because the life I live now wasn't missing anyone. I built a family of choice. Friends who remembered my birthday without Facebook reminders. Neighbors who helped shovel snow off my driveway without being asked. Coworkers who celebrated my milestones with real pride. And one day I met someone. Her name was Elise. She was quiet at first, thoughtful in a way that reminded me of myself. We met at a local art fair. She was selling handmade pottery, and I bought a mug with a tiny crack on the handle. She tried to give me a better one, but I told her I liked it, that the flaw made it mine. That night we had coffee and talked for hours. Weeks turned into months. She didn't ask about my family right away. When she finally did, I told her the truth. She didn't flinch. She just took my hand. Elise helped me plant wildflowers in the backyard. We adopted a rescue cat named Clover. And slowly, we built something quiet and beautiful, not out of obligation, but choice. The house changed, too. New colors, softer rugs, little signs of shared life. But the foundation remained strong, resilient mine. One spring afternoon, I stood by the front door, looking at the porch where Liam had once sat. I hadn't heard from him in a while, but I hoped he was finding his own path, away from the shadows of our parents. As I turned the key and stepped back inside, I realized the truth. I had said goodbye a long time ago. The rest of the world was just catching up. And I was okay with that. More than okay. I was free. The second winter after I turned them away was quiet. Snow fell in thick, gentle layers across the roof, softening the edges of my small home. I had decorated the porch with lights, not elaborate, just enough to glow warm and golden when the sun set early. Inside, the air was scented with cinnamon and baked apples. Elise had just pulled a pie from the oven, and Clover, our cat, perched on the windowsill, lazily tracking snowflakes with her eyes. There was peace here. Peace that had been earned through years of loneliness, effort, and pain, but peace all the same. I had stopped looking over my shoulder, stopped expecting one more message, one more demand. The house felt safe again, every corner imbued with choice, not threat. One morning, I received a Christmas card in the mail. No return address, just block letters across the envelope. Inside was a simple message. I hope you're still proud of the life you've made. I smiled. I knew it was Liam. It didn't beg for contact. It didn't reopen wounds. It was just a thread of acknowledgement. A nod between two people who had shared the same storm and washed up on different shores. That winter, Elise and I invited a few friends for Christmas dinner. We filled the house with laughter and clinking glasses, and when someone asked what I was grateful for, I surprised myself by saying, "This house." And everything it taught me, because it had. It taught me the difference between shelter and safety, between family and familiarity, between love that lifts you and love that only knows how to weigh you down. It taught me to choose myself, not out of bitterness but out of recognition. And somewhere in that long journey, from duffel bag to deed, from betrayal to belonging, I had found something even more valuable than a roof over my head. I had found my voice. I didn't need their approval anymore. I didn't need their explanations or their rewritten histories. I had my own truth, steady as bricks, enduring as the roots of the trees outside my window. And I would keep it safe. Years from now, if I ever have children and they ask me about my family, I'll tell them the truth, not to burden them, but to show them what survival looks like. And maybe, just maybe, I'll show them the photo of a young girl with uneven bangs and a cautious smile, tucked into the hallway shelf, quietly watching over a home she helped build with her own two hands. Because she never really left. She just needed someone to stay for. These are stories that show the consequences and limits of family relationships, especially between parents and children. They reveal what happens when love is conditional, when favoritism replaces fairness, and when one child is expected to carry the weight of everyone's failure. In the end, family isn't just who you're born to, it's who shows up when it matters most. It's the people who see you, not as a role to fill but as a person with a story worth hearing. To everyone listening, have you ever had to walk away from family to protect your peace? What did it cost you, and what did it give you? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe for more quiet truths and powerful journeys.